Hey, students. Good evening. It is evening for me. I'm not sure for you, but good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Mr. V's 1301 Unit 2 exam review, okay, for 1301. So let's get started. I'm going to try and get this ready for you in 20 minutes, and it can be done in 20 minutes. Like I said, it's just a quick review of what's coming up on the exam tomorrow, and you will be allowed to take the exam until Tuesday. This is for summer 1, 2020. Um, uh, we're going to start with the Enlightenment, okay? And the importance of the Enlightenment is simply and because uh, the Enlightenment begins in Europe and it spills over to the United States. And what we're going to have is that we're going to have a mass of great thinkers that are going to influence in their writing. Remember, we also have uh, the disbursement of reading material. As people become more literate, they read a lot. Believe it or not, people in colonial America used to read a lot. They really enjoy their reading. Uh, you're going to have in the United States, you're going to have men like Benjamin Franklin, and you're going to have men like Thomas Jefferson, who are going to be very, very progressive in their thinking. Ben Franklin with his inventions, he invents the Franklin stove, he invents bifocals, he also invents this apparatus that's made out of glass and it spins and you can play it. If you go to Philadelphia, sometimes they'll be out there playing that. He also comes up with a concept of to the mail. He has the first free library in Philadelphia. It's still there. Um, he also comes up with a concept of regeneration. So he is really cutting edge. A lot of people always say, if you could meet anybody from the past, who would you like to meet? And my mine would always be him or Freddie Mercury, the lead singer from Queen. There's quite a difference there. Benjamin Franklin or that. If Benjamin Franklin was alive right now, he would be on the cover of every magazine because he was just a really cool guy. But you also have individuals saying that the rights that are given to us are not given to us by any other than that we're born with them, that we are born with rights. And that's why I want you to read the short article, Wars of the American Revolution, because these rights are given to us by God. Now, they don't say a Christian God. A lot of the founding fathers did have religions, but they were deists. They believed in a God, and that they believed that God gave individuals the ability to reason and to think for themselves in self-determination. Okay, so Thomas Paine writes Common Sense, which says, hey, it's time for you all to go. You also have individuals traveling the United States and saying, hey, it's time for you all to live on your own. Uh, we also have the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War. Okay, what that is going to create is that, in a nutshell, because I have to do all of this in a nutshell, is that the French and Indian War is going to create a lot of animosity between the colonies and the British, because colonial Americans are going to trade with the French. The French, when they trade goods with the French pay them. When the British trade with them, the British just take the stuff, okay? And the colonists don't like that. They say, well, we're going to take this, we're going to requisition the stuff, and then we're going to pay you for it later on. The British also use empty buildings to sleep. They also Shanghai or remove colonial Americans from American ships and impress them into service. Some of these guys never come back to colonial America. And those are problems that are going to uh, uh, this is going to create problems in colonial America. When the war is over, when the French and Indian War is over, the French lose. And because the French lose, uh, uh, Great Britain really comes down hard on the colonies, and they tell the colonies the reason that we fought the war is so we could protect you from the evil French, which wasn't entirely true. Okay, so they start taxing the colonists. Now there is a couple of videos that I posted with John Green, and John Green does a really good job of going through taxation. Okay, now the idea that it was taxation without representation is not completely sound. Okay, I mean the only way that you can run a country is and build infrastructure is with taxes, and colonial Americans uh, uh, felt that they were being overly taxed, but they weren't, because they were actually paying an average of 3 cents on the dollar or on the pound. And in Great Britain, an average citizen was paying 25%. And a lot of the taxes a lot of the taxation was on manufactured goods that were coming in from England, like tea, glass, paper, paint, lead, those kind of things, textiles, those things that were coming in. So you don't really have an abuse of taxation going on in the colony. But of course, it's going to be fought over taxation. I also think it's going to be fought because the revolutionary or colonial Americans felt that it was time for them to, I would say, uh, be free, be an independent country. Um, so you have to watch that Stamp Act, the Sugar Act, the Townsend Act, the Intolerable Acts. Those are things. Those I want you to know. Those I want you to know. The Sugar Act, and the Sugar Act actually reduces the tax on molasses, but what it does is that it has the little concept of search and seizure. Okay, and that they consider that to be a violation of personal freedoms, and I agree with that. Okay. It also allows people that are caught smuggling, they're not tried by a jury of their peers. They're tried by an admiralty court, which almost always found them guilty. The Stamp Act taxed any legal document, okay? And we have those now. As a matter of fact, I have one right here. Right here. I have to go get my registration renewal service for my truck. That is a stamp right there. You get a little sticker, you put it on your car, and you paid your tax on your car. Any kind of fee that is imposed by the government, the birth certificate, death certificate, your driver's license, all those things can be construed or seen as stamp taxes. Okay, it's a fee that by the government. Okay, for you to use the roads or drive your vehicle or whatever it may be. It's really, I think it's really funny that most of my children, we did not get a copy of their official birth certificate until right before they entered kindergarten because we were always poor. So the one that they give you at the hospital is not a legally binding birth certificate. Okay, the one that you get at the courthouse, that is a legally binding birth certificate. And that's the one that you take to the school when you enroll your child into kindergarten. And a lot of us don't do it until then, either because one, we're lazy, or number two, we just don't have the money to do it. And the other one we're going to talk about is the Intolerable Acts. Now, the Intolerable Acts don't happen until after the Boston Tea Party, okay? And the reason of that is that the reason that you have the Intolerable Acts is because of the Townsend Acts. One of the things that colonists used to do is that they used to boycott, and boycotting was very successful. So when they boycott the Stamp Act, then they come up with the Townsend Acts, and the Townsend Acts say we're not going to tax anything that is in colonial America. We're going to tax finished goods. lead, glass, paint, tea, you know, things that are coming in from England. Now they also boycott that, and when they boycott that, they leave the tax on tea. And now the reason that they leave the tax on tea is that the East India Company was going bankrupt, and they felt, well, if we leave the tax on tea, then the revenue that we receive that from that will keep us from having to rescue the East India Company from bankruptcy, because a lot of the people from the House of Commons had interest in the East India Company. The colonists thought that they were trying to trick them, and they dumped the equivalent of $1 million worth of tea into Boston Harbor, and the British got really pissed off. So instead of taxing all of the colonies, they taxed Boston, and it backfires on the British, because what it creates is that it creates a lot of sympathy from the rest of the colonies, and they say, "Oh, look, they're ganging up on Boston. They're having Irish Catholic soldiers guard them. They have quartering act where they're making the colonists in Boston give the soldiers clean hay for them to sleep on, candles, 2 pints of beer a day. This is not good. I've got a 18-year-old daughter, and here's this Irish Catholic soldier sleeping in an empty room. Uh, they have stopped. They close the port of Boston until the tea is paid for. So it is going to create some issues. Now, you also have the Boston Massacre. Okay, and the Boston Massacre is actually a publicity stunt after it happens. You have to be careful with the Boston Massacre, because what ends up happening in the Boston Massacre is that the colonists don't really know which way it's going to go. So what they do is that at first they portray the colonists as being unruly. Uh, I'm sorry. And Paul Revere plays it up to have been a massacre. Okay, the reason that the Boston Massacre happens is basically you have a couple of kids that go down to the tax collector's place, and they're like chunking rocks at him. Guy comes out with his blunderbuss. The kids run off. The tax collector fires a shot and kills one of the kids. Okay. At night they come to protest, and they start chunking snowballs at the British soldiers. The problem is that they were sticking rocks inside the snowballs, and they clown a couple of the British soldiers. Now, what happens here is that somebody fires a shot. The first guy that kills, and this is really ironic, his name is Crispus Atticus. He's African American. He dies, and a couple of others are killed. You can still go to their graves in Boston, and there's really nothing there. That's just where they're buried, and it's actually a really somber place to visit. But the idea here is that American colonists were killed. You had a child that was killed, and now you have American colonists that were killed. And of course, Paul Revere really capitalizes on that. Now, believe it or not, uh, guess who tries them or defends them? Actually, John Adams, which is going to be the second president of the United States. And he does have some of them acquitted. Some of them are found guilty. They're branded on their thumb, and they're sent back to England. But what's so important about the Boston Massacre is really the you have the discussion of what rights and liberties are, and who are they extended to. Okay, like the people that got killed were not men in powdered wigs wearing tights. These were individuals like you and me, and they start saying, like, well, wait a minute. When we're talking about liberty, who is this extended to? Artisans or common laborers? So you get a wide discussion of rights and liberties, and the irony of, African American is killed. is the first one killed in this struggle. But also, one of the things that John Adams says is that when the pot is set to boil, the scum rises to the top. So you can see the division between rich and poor. Okay, now the culmination of all of this is going to happen at Lexington and Concord, and I'm not going to go into great detail there. Okay, just that the incident at Lexington and Concord, when the British go to retrieve munitions that are held at Lexington and Concord, is really where the war starts. After that, you have the Continental Congress get together. They choose George Washington as the commander in chief. But even then, Benjamin Franklin extends the olive branch petition, pretty much telling King George, please don't kick our butts. We want to be friends, we want our liberty, but it's too late now. So the beginning of the war is Lexington and Concord. Now the only battles that I want you to know about is Lexington and Concord, which is the first one. I want you to know Bunker Hill or Breed's Hill for the simple fact that there is nothing significant about that. But that's when the British realized that it's not going to be a cakewalk, that these rebels can fight. I want you to know about Saratoga. That's when the French get involved. I want you to know about Valley Forge because it's a moral victory, and Baron von Steuben joins the war and shapes the Continental Army into a fighting force. He also writes the Army Training Manual, which part of it is still being used today. And what's so significant about him is that he was militantly gay, and he is pretty much expelled from Europe because of his homosexuality. But Washington took him in. But remember, also Washington also took Marquis de Lafayette, Kosciuszko, DeKalb. I mean, anybody that wanted to come fight, and he took these seasoned soldiers to command. Okay, I'm at 17 minutes. I'm pretty much going to go over. So be it. So the war is over. Okay, the war is over, and it is a very hasty done peace. Cornwallis surrenders at Yorktown when he is surrounded by the French in the back, Washington in the front. He surrenders. He actually doesn't even go to Washington to surrender. He actually sends Washington his sword, which I think is pretty flaky of Washington not to do that. Right? And now we have a country. We owe France a bunch of money. The British are still marauding around in the Northwest Territories. What are we going to do? Well, this could turn into, 3 days of lecture, but we're not going to do that. I want you to know about nation building. I want you to know the Northwest Territories, okay? And I want you to know the Ordinance of 1785, 1786, and 1787. Or 84, 85, 86, and 87. I get them confused. I don't have my notes with me. You're going to have an issue of, what belongs to whom. And when we talk about freedom, who is it extended to? I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes that was done in nation building was to create a nation with the institution of slavery built into it. I mean, it's almost hypocritical to say we're going to start this great country, but we're going to have second-class citizens built into it. It doesn't make any sense to me. As we go from Washington's presidency to John Adams' presidency, you're going to see the conflict between Adams and between Jefferson and the rise of republicanism, okay? Not Republicans like today, but the Republicans of yesteryear. And it's going to be Federalists against Republicans. And then, of course, in the third election, Jefferson becomes the president. Okay? And Adams is a one-term president. Now, Adams was a really cool guy. I mean, I don't think there was ever... He's by according to me, he's one of the best presidents we've ever had. But he also went after a lot of personal liberties, like the Alien and Sedition Acts and silencing newspapers, and because of the French Revolution. He felt that the French were over here creating problems, and we may have yet another revolution that happens. And when they kind of didn't want that, okay? When Jefferson comes in, he's going to have issues because then he's going to want to be the all powerful, kind of do as I say, not as I do. When really, under the Adams administration, he comes up with the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, which, in my opinion, I think is the spark that eventually is going to start the Civil War. So where he believed that the states had to be sovereign and that the federal government needed to be small. Of course, that's going to be settled during the Civil War. And then you're going to have Hamiltonian federalism and Jeffersonian republicanism, and you need to know those things. It's pretty simple. And of course, John Green also does a very good job of explaining this. Hamilton wanted a country rooted in industry, economy, and building finished goods and export. Okay? Jefferson wanted an agrarian society. But what's the problem with an agrarian society is that you need a labor source, and that labor source is going to be slavery. So he was kind of caught in this conundrum, while Hamilton wanted to create a national bank, a monetary system, a credit system, borrow money from Europe, pay them back when we sold our finished goods, which is what we have now. I mean, eventually Hamiltonian federalism prevails. On the other hand, what Jefferson wanted was an economy that was rooted in farming. And an economy rooted on farming, and this is a farmer talking to you, a small-time farmer. What is it that farmers cannot control, or that anybody cannot control? And I can hear you all answering, rain. I cannot control rain. If it rains the way it's supposed to, then we're going to have a good economy, a good farming economy. Grass is going to grow, crops are going to grow, cows are going to eat, but we can't have that. So farming is feast and famine. With industry, if the economy's not doing good, then you can always mass produce goods and sell them cheaper, okay? Or hold them back, create a shortage. You can't do that with cows because they keep growing. You can store shoes and stuff like that. I mean, so eventually, and in an economy that is rooted in industry, and you make a lot of money, you pay a lot of taxes. No, one of the reasons that a lot of people engage in farming is that we farmers get so many tax breaks. Okay, I mean, if you look at my truck, it's got farm tags. I pay less for that. When I go get diesel for my tractor, I get dyed diesel because it goes to the tractor, so it's cheaper. When I buy implements for the farm, I don't have to pay taxes on them. Anything that is farm related, I can't go buy a television and not pay taxes on it, okay? It doesn't work that way. But if I go out and buy a cement mixer for my farm, and the cement mixer is $1,000, I'm not going to have to pay a $100 tax on it, because that's how much it's going to be, because I'm going to use it at the farm. And if it qualifies as a farming implement, you do that. You can write those things off in an industrial society, in a commercial society, but it doesn't matter, because when you start making more money, they're gonna tax you more. And the market doesn't fluctuate as much in industry as it does in farming, especially if there's a drought or if there's bumper crops. There's bumper crops of wheat, the price of wheat goes down, and it doesn't matter if there's a bumper crop, because everybody has wheat. We export it to other countries, and we got to export it at a very cheap price, so I don't make the money I'm supposed to. I always end up making the same amount of money, and there's only so much work that I can do. Okay, and the idea was to have a large family so a lot of people could work. But the birth rate in colonial America wasn't very good, so you have to depend on slaves in order to produce enough goods to be a successful farmer and pray that you don't have a drought. Okay, so I want you to know the difference between Hamiltonian federalism and Jeffersonian republicanism. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm pretty sure I forgot a lot of things, is the War of 1812. And I'm not going to go into great detail at all. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to go into it at all. But I want you to know the reasons for the War of 1812, and I want you to know the results of the War of 1812. And they're like 5 and 5, okay? And they're on those notes, my lecture notes, they're there. Reasons, results. That's what I want you to know. The War of 1812 is, in my opinion, a continuation of the American Revolution because we did not settle differences correctly. And one of the things that the United States gets tagged on when they fight the War of 1812, and I think it's a draw, the War of 1812 is a draw, is that the British make sure that the Americans pay for that tea that they dumped into the harbor years ago. They hadn't forgot about the tea. And one of the things that they agree on is removing ships from the Great Lakes. I mean, the British were going around harassing American settlers, and doing that kind of stuff, But you also have people that are raising hell, like Aaron Burr in Florida, and Aaron Burr shoots Alexander Hamilton, and you've got a conflict between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. By the way, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams actually become very good pen pals after the death of John Adams' wife. She dies of cancer. I believe it's breast cancer, and his daughter also dies of breast cancer. There's a really good movie called Adams, John Adams. You should watch it. It's really good. They used to make all sorts of fun of John Adams. They say he smelled bad and he had rotten teeth and that he was a hermaphrodite and all these other horrible things that they used to say about him. But they become real good friends, and they die on the same day, if I'm not mistaken, on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. They died on July the 4th, okay? The last words of John Adams is Jefferson lives, but unbeknownst to him, John Adams had died earlier in the morning. So Thomas Jefferson dies, and then John Adams dies on July the 4th, on the 50th anniversary of the American Revolution. I'm almost positive that's it. I'm pretty sure it's not the 25th anniversary because that would have been like, 1800. So I'm pretty sure it's the 50th anniversary. Okay. I'm pretty sure I missed a lot of things. Make sure that you look at your notes, the lecture notes that I have provided for you, and you watch those John Green videos. I mean, I didn't put them there for nothing. Okay. They're going to help you a lot. What I gave you is only 30 minutes. I mean, it takes me, what I just reviewed takes me 5 lectures to cover, okay? So this is like 6 hours of material scrunched into 30 minutes, okay? Y'all take care, and I am going to give you an extra day until Monday to take the exam because till Tuesday, I think. To take the exam because that's what I'm doing for the other class. You all take care and have a good weekend, and please be kind to each other.